This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. This episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox, is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the Space Navigator. To learn more about them, visit their website at www.3dconnection.com. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 23. Now today we're going to be talking about a really interesting feature in Sketchup, multiplying and dividing. Now no, this doesn't mean using Sketchup as a calculator. This is actually a way of copying an object, but copying it evenly over an entire space. Let me show you what I mean by that. So this is what I have in my project for this particular episode, and as you can see, it's just a very simple slab. I'm going to be calling this the floor, actually, and it's just 4 feet wide and 16 feet long. And this is what we're going to model some railing on. We're actually going to make a railing on one side of this slab. Now, the reason we're going to be doing railing is because with a railing, you need to have basically some poles, small poles, sticking out of the side right here, and you need a lot of them. So typically a railing would have, those poles spaced maybe every 6 or 9 inches or something like that. So over 16 feet, you're going to have a lot of those. Now I'll show you a typical way you would do it. The first thing you need to do, regardless of whether you do it manually or use the multiply and divide features, is you just need to model whatever it is you're going to make copies of. So I'll just use the rectangle tool here, and I want to point out I have grouped my floor here. That's very important because I want to be able to move my posts that I do on top of this independently of the floor. And if the floor is grouped, they're not going to stick like usual. So I can just use the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw just a 1-inch square. So I'll just type in 1, 1. That'll give me a 1-inch square. And then I'm going to use the push-pull tool and pull it up maybe, let's say 3 feet. 3 apostrophe and enter, and now I've got a 3 foot tall 1-inch square rod sticking straight up out of the floor. Now typically what you would do is you would select this and then use the move tool, hit M for the move tool, hit the option key to make it the copy tool, and then just click and drag this out 9 inches like that. So there we have the beginnings of a railing, but you can see that this is going to take a while, and this is only 16 feet. Some railings are going to be much longer than that, and it's going to get really annoying and really old really quickly. So I'm going to show you how the multiply and divide tools can really help you with this. And you'll want to, they're very similar in the way they work and what they do, but depending on whether you're doing a railing or something else, you'll want to pick which one will work best for you. So first step is, of course, model the object you want to duplicate. So the next step is, and this is optional, but I really like to group my object first. So I'll select it all and then right click and say Make Group. That just kind of makes it easier to keep track of things. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to, just like we did manually, we're going to select it first, and then we're going to hit the M key for the move tool, and then Option to make it the copy tool, and I'm going to grab it by this corner here, hit the right arrow key to lock it to the red axis, so I can move my cursor wherever I want, but it stays on the red axis. Type in 9 for 9 inches, enter. Now this is where the difference is. This is crucial. Do not deselect that copy that you made. Do not do anything else, because this is the only time that the multiply and divide tools will work. Otherwise, you're going to have to redo your copy. So don't deselect, don't do anything. And then the next step is, actually, there's no tool for this. There's no tool, there's no menu bar command. It's all done with the keyboard. It's kind of almost a hidden feature, actually, but it works really well. To multiply, which is what I'm going to show you now, to multiply, you type in on your keyboard either the X key So like a big times sign, a multiply sign, an X, or you can also use the asterisks on your number pad, just like if you were typing onto a computer's calculator. You want to do a times symbol, you do either X or asterisks. And personally, I like to use the asterisk key. You might also think of it as the star key. That's how I thought of it for a long time, mostly because it's really hard to say asterisks. But just do star or X. And then you'll notice that in our dimensions box, which still says length from when we were doing our copy, but it now says star or asterisks. So now it's basically looking, and it knows, okay, we are now in multiply mode. The next thing to do is say how many copies of this thing you want. So how many times you want to multiply it. So in this case, I'm going to multiply it by 5. So I'll type in 5, and then I'll hit enter. And you see what it just did? This is so cool because it has just made copies of these things, and they are spaced 9 inches apart. It basically takes whatever movement you did with your first copy. So like this was my original pole right here. I copied it over 9 inches this way, and then I said times that by 5. So it made 5 versions of that are spaced the same amount apart. Now, this is a little bit confusing because while this feature is great, this is one thing that I've always found a little bit odd that it works this way, is that you'll notice we had our first original, then we had our second copy, and then I said times that by 5. You would think that it would make 5 more copies, but it only made 4. It makes 1 less. It's like you have to count the original in that multiply. So it did create 5, it kept the first one, and then it added 4 more to make it 5. So just kind of think about that. The way I think of it, it should really be you times it by 5, you get 5 more. But if you think, okay, well, I need 3 more here, just type in times 4, and it'll give you 3 more. So that's a little bit confusing, but once you get your mind wrapped around that it actually works really nicely. Now, in this case, obviously, I don't have enough of these poles to make it all the way down. Timesing it by 5 didn't do quite enough. Now, you might think, well, now you've got to redo it. You've got to delete those old ones and make another copy, or just, start copying again. Well, that's not the case. As long as I don't do anything else, I don't switch tools, I don't select anything else, I don't do anything, I've just finished doing my multiply, it's actually still waiting for a multiply command. So let's say I wanted 1 more of these. Instead of times 5, I can just type in again times 6 and hit enter, and it gives me 1 more. It doesn't keep multiplying. It's like saying times 6 didn't give me 6 more copies. It just made it so that it times it again, but added 1 more in that case. Now in this case, I can just keep going. I'll just go times 12. We're getting there. You can still move around in your model without messing up the multiply thing, so you can see where you're going. But we're going to need more than 12. Let's do times 20. Getting there. It looks like we need just 1 more. So I'll do times 21. Perfect. Look at that. That's excellent. And really, it only took me seconds, whereas before it would have taken me several minutes to make all of these copies. And then, of course, the next thing to do is add the railing on the top, which for that I'm actually just going to grab my floor, make a copy of it, lock it to the blue axis, set it right on top of those, and then I'll just double click to edit the group, and then I'll use the push-pull tool to push it back like that, and now I have a very, very simple railing. So that is the way you multiply things, and you can see it works really, really well. But there's also divide. And I'll show you that next. But first, I want to thank the people who make this show possible. 3D Connection. Now, as I'm sure you know by now, these guys make the Space Navigator, which is so awesome. It's like a joystick almost for SketchUp. It allows you to navigate without switching tools, without using, mouse buttons and hotkeys and all that stuff. It just works. It's so intuitive and easy to use, and it's actually really great because not only does it have 0 learning curve for you, it has 0 learning curve for anyone else. Say you have a friend that you're modeling something for, and he wants to take a look at the model and see how you're doing. You can just sit him down, he can use the Space Navigator, no problem. It's just so intuitive. Now, not only do they have the standard Space Navigator, they even have a version for notebooks, which is a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, and comes with its own carrying case if you're the kind of guy who models things on the go. Say you go to someone's house and start modeling their living room for them. You can take just your laptop and your Space Navigator and start entering in the SketchUp dimensions right then and there. They are absolutely fantastic. Be sure to check them out at their website, which is www.3dconnection.com. I want to thank them so much for their support of SketchUp, a 3D toolbox. So I just showed you how to use the multiply feature, but there's also the divide feature, which is really, really cool, and I actually use that one a ton as well. So I'm just going to select these things that I made and delete them. Actually, I'm only going to select these guys. I'll leave my first one so that we can work with him. So if I know exactly how far apart I want my object, so I know I want these posts, I want them exactly 9 inches apart, and just duplicate that until you get to the end over here. That's a good place where you can use the multiply tool. But if you don't know how far apart you want your objects, you only know how many of them you want, then the divide tool is the tool for you. So what I do for that is same thing as the multiply tool, where you model whatever it is you want to divide, group it. In my case, that's optional, but I really like to group things. Select that. And then the next step is also to select it, switch to the move tool, option key to make it the copy tool, and then copy it. But instead of moving it just 9 inches down, I'm going to go ahead and lock it into the red axis again, you move it down to the other end. So think of this as like a starting point and an end point. You've got your starting point right here. This is where you want your railing to start. And then just move this down to the end point where you want it to end. So we'll put it right there. Now again, just like the multiply tool, you need to make sure you don't do anything else. Don't deselect, don't switch tools, don't do anything. The very next thing you want to do is use the divide key, which on your keyboard, it's the slash key. And it's just like that's the same key that they use for divide on computer calculators as well, so it's very intuitive. So, and again, in your length box, watch out for when you hit slash, you see slash, and then divide by, and then however many you want to, have this divided by. So if I were to say, for example, let's try, I think I did something like 20 last time. Let's try 15. Let's see what 15 looks like. Divide by 15. It divides up the space in between your starting point and your end point perfectly. These things are all evenly spaced, not 9 inches, but they're perfectly evenly spaced all the way down. And this is really cool. Now, just like the multiply tool, you can continue to tweak this. Say, 15, they're a little bit far apart. Let's do divide by 20. Boom, there we go. That's looking a little bit better. And you can do, say divide by 40 and get even more of them. Now, just like the multiply tool, I'll show you, let me show you something. If I were to, let's just do a smaller number. I'll say divide by 4. You'll notice that just like the multiply tool, it doesn't give us 4 of these poles in between our start and our end point. It only gives us 3 because it counts the end point in that divide by thing. So if I just say divide by 1, nothing happens. If I say divide by 2, I get 1 in the center. So that's the way that works. Figure out how many you want in between and then just add 1. So I'm just going to go, let's say divide by 18. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I'll just do the same thing that I did last time. I'll just grab a copy of my floor, move it up and set it right down on top there. Move into here and push these back. Done. Now, this is such a time saver. I mean, you will find instances, railings, that's kind of an obvious example, but say, for example, you're doing a fence and you had all these slats that you were trying to make, just duplicate them across. Another great example is, keep in mind that this is not limited to just one axis, one dimension. It's not like you just say, okay, move this to the left and then multiply, or move this to the right and then multiply, or move it up or down and then multiply. You can actually do a thing. Let me show you one last trick here. You can actually do a thing where if I delete these guys here, I could select this pole, make a copy of it, and put this copy up and to the left like that, right? So it's both to the left and up. Then I just say, times 5. Same thing. It basically just takes whatever transformation you did to the original and just does it again. Just keeps duplicating it. So, I mean, you could do a thing where you move something in one move. You have to do it. You can't do it in multiple moves. You have to do it in one swift motion. Otherwise, it'll just do whatever the last movement you did was. So you can't just say like, okay, move this to the left and then up and then to the right. It needs to be all in one movement, but if you do that, then it'll just multiply it all the way. And this would be a perfect thing to do on a stair railing. This would be perfect for that. So it's a really, really nifty feature. Well, the multiply and divide tools really are very powerful in SketchUp, and you can see that, particularly when you're dealing with a large amount of things. I mean, we were only working with 20 at the most today, but imagine if you have hundreds of them. You can see how it's really going to pay off. Now, until next time, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. We've got the show notes, lesson files, all kinds of great stuff for you on there. And if you have any questions or comments for me or any suggestions for future episodes, send me an email at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. Till next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.